In this particular video, we're going to learn how to multiply radical expressions. An easy way to do this is when you have two radicals that are being multiplied together, go ahead and do that and multiply the two numbers under the radicand so you can get square root of 16. And then we can take the square root of 16, which is just 4. Okay, so let's do another example. We're going to multiply these two numbers together and get radical 18. And when we do this, okay, when we break down radical 18, we want combinations that one of them is perfect square. So 9 times 2 would be a perfect combination because the square root of 9 is a perfect square. So, and then we can go ahead and say, okay, the square root of 9 is 3. And then the answer would be 3 radical 2. Okay? So, that would be the final answer for that one. Okay? Let's look at another one. And this time we'll do the cube root of 2 times the cube root of 16 times the cube root of 4. Alright? And the best way to deal with this is multiply all of the numbers under the radical and get one radical, which would be the cube root of 128. Okay? And when we break down the cube root of 128, we think of two numbers to multiply to get 128. And 64 times 2 would give you 128 back. So when we break this down, we got to think of the cube root of 64 times the cube root of 2. Okay, and we can easily take the cube root of 64, and that's going to be 4. Okay, so it'll be 4 times the cube root of 2. And when you multiply that, that just becomes 4 times the cube root of 2, and then that would be your final answer. Okay, let's continue with some more examples. Let's say you had 2 radical x, and you want to multiply that by 3 radical 2x. And remember, when we do this, we're going to multiply the coefficients together, and then multiply by whatever's under the radical. Okay, so that's going to equal, now 2 times 3 is going to give me 6, and then radical x times radical 2x is going to give me the square root of 2x squared, because we're adding the exponents. Okay? And then that would be your final answer. Okay, this would be number 4, by the way. Okay? Alright, so let's do something like this. Again, this reminds you of the distributive property, right? We're going to multiply radical 7 times 2, and then radical 7 times radical 3. So radical 7 times 2 is going to be 2 radical 7. Remember, you're not allowed to multiply a number outside of the radical with a number inside the radical. Okay, so the 2 goes on the outside, and then square root of 7 times the square root of 3 is radical 21. Okay, and we're not able to simplify this any further. Okay, so this is going to be the answer for this one. Okay, all right, let's look at another example. Square root of 5 times the square root of 10 plus the square root of 8. So we're going to go ahead and apply the distributive property. And when we do that, the square root of 5 times the square root of 10 is, in fact, the square root of 50. And then we're going to multiply square root of 5 times the square root of 8. And that's going to give us the square root of 40. Now we're going to break down these radicals individually. And when I do that, I'm going to pick a combination. So one of the numbers is a perfect square. 25 times 2 would work because 25 is a perfect square. And when you do the same for 40, you're going to pick radical 4 times radical 10 because the square root of 25 and the square root of 4 are perfect squares. So the square root of 25 is in fact 5, and we multiply that by the square root of 2, that's just square root of 2. Square root of 4 is 2, multiply it by the square root of 10, is 2 radical 10. And that cannot be simplified anymore, so this would be the final answer. Okay, let's do some more examples. Let's go ahead and do this one. And we're going to use the FOIL. We're going to FOIL. You remember that? So we're going to do radical 3 times radical 6. That's going to be first. And that's going to give you 18. Okay? Then we're going to do radical 3 times radical 3. And that's going to give me radical 9. Then we're going to do radical 5 times radical 6. And that's going to give me radical 30. And then we're going to do radical 5 times radical 3, which is radical 15. Okay, so let's go ahead and break each radical down. And this one is going to be the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. We want to pick a combination so that what two numbers multiply to give me 18, so one of them is a perfect square. Well, radical 9 is going to work because we can take the square root of that. All right? And then square root of 9 is going to be 3. Radical 30 is not going to be simplified. So no matter what combination you pick, you will not get any perfect squares. 2 and 15, 3 and 10, okay, will not help you. So we're going to leave that as radical 30. And the same goes for radical 15. Can't simplify that either because 3 and 5 are both prime numbers. You're not going to be able to simplify it. All right. But we can simplify the square root of 9, which is going to be 3, times the square root of 2, plus 3, plus square root of 30, plus the square root of 15. So 3 times the square root of 2 is just 3 radical 2 plus 3 plus radical 30 plus 15. Okay, and this does not simplify anymore. There's nothing much you can do here, so this is the final answer. Okay, all the radicals are different, and then every term is different, so we're not going to be able to simplify it any further than what it is right now. Okay, let's look at the next example. And we're going to FOIL this. Okay, So this is a really good problem because now we want to do square root of x minus 2 times the square root of x minus 2. And that's going to give me square root of x minus 2 squared. Then we're going to do square root of x minus 2 times minus 3. And that's just going to give me minus 3 radical x minus 2. Then we're going to do the inside. So that's going to be 3 times radical x minus 2. So then you have 3 radical x minus 2. Then you have 3 times minus 3, and that's just going to give you a minus 9. Okay? So remember, if you take anything under the radical, let's kind of identify this part. You have radical x minus 2, and when you square that, okay, that falls out of the radical and just becomes x minus 2. And then you notice that minus 3 radical x minus 2 plus 3 radical x minus 2, these two terms cancel because they're the same. And then you just have minus 9. And that's going to simplify to minus 2 minus 9 is minus 11, and therefore that is your final answer. Okay? So you just had to simplify a few things. Okay, so hope this video was very helpful. Thank you for watching.